Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, I have some audio to play in this episode, certainly in the education and jab portion. But first, I want to mention this. This is something, of course, that happens consistently in the United States, all over the place. And I think this right here, again, defines numerous points that I've made in the past, and I know you're with me on this, is that if the military doesn't come in and clean house here, and I'm talking about politicians, getting rid of politicians, that if this doesn't happen, this right here is where a war would actually take place, or a civil war, quote unquote, would take place in our country. You have numerous politicians in the United States consistently passing bills, writing bills, passing laws that are then signed by governors and so on, in order to cover up their own crimes, or keep people from investigating their crimes. Case in point, the state of Michigan. Let me read this very quickly. Again, this is off Gateway Pundit, but this again just exemplifies the point that I'm making here, that the levee is going to break on all of this, and it has to break eventually, which again means that either the military needs to get involved, and I'm not talking about the gay portion of the military, not talking about the tranny portion of the military. I'm talking about, again, the catch basin of real military people behind the scenes who know what's going on. If they don't go state to state and start cleaning house, ladies and gentlemen, we have a constitutional right to take back our own government for the people. Again, not advocating for violence yet. I'm just saying this is a constitutional right that we have, and this is something that we shouldn't forget. So the story was titled, Michigan Senator Goes Off on Dirty Democrats After They Pass Bills, plural, Making It Impossible for Board of Canvassers to Investigate Election Fraud in Crooked State of Michigan. Allow me to play this audio of this very individual. This is a Jim Runstad. There we go, Runstad. He said, today, the Michigan Senate Democrats overturned 70 years of election law in order to commit a disgusting gutting of our election recount protections. The passage of the bill is a complete disgrace. His tweet goes on, but here's him in his own words in 3, 2, 1.
I am very discouraged, disappointed that we passed today Senate Bill 603 and 4. The current law regarding the Board of Canvassers is very clear. I'm not going to take the time to read every section out of the law currently, but it's very, very clear that in case of a recount, if somebody suspects fraud, they are able to bring that to the Board of Canvassers. The Board of Canvassers are permitted to investigate fraud. Contrary to everything I've been hearing on the other side of the aisle, in posts, the media not covering it, it is clear as a bell that if there's allegations of fraud in a recount, that the Board of Canvassers have currently the ability to investigate fraud. They also have currently the ability to subpoena. They have subpoena power. It's very clear in the law currently, despite what the other side says and despite the fact that the media will not print any of this for the public to be aware of. This bill, 603, removes that ability from the Board of Canvassers. It is a big change. What they put in instead is, well, if you suspect fraud, turn it over to the hyper-partisan Attorney General. Oh, I'm sure if it's a Republican making that claim, it's going to get a thorough investigation. Or turn it over to the hyper-partisan Democrat prosecutors within the big cities where the majority of the votes are. Oh, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of investigation of fraud from those individuals. It is being done after 70 years of having this system. All of a sudden, we have to strip the power from these Board of Canvassers. They say, well, there's never been an example where it was used. Completely untrue. In the 2020 election, we First, in 2016, I believe in Detroit, it was 72% of the precincts couldn't be recounted, mostly for an overcount, for a whole series of issues. Broken open ballot boxes. So we gave them more time and money. And what happened in 2020? It went from, I believe, the 72% to 79%. How can this happen? So these very astute Board of Canvassers for Wayne County said, we want to find out what happened. What happened then? They had a tsunami of death threats. Of all the death threats that I've heard bantied around, the absolute worst I have ever heard was against that Wayne County Board of Canvassers. A female who was doxxed, her daughter was doxxed. They sent horrific things to the mother. One of them was a tortured, bloody, murdered little girl the same age as her daughter, and said, if you don't vote for this, is going to happen to your daughter. Of all the threats I've heard, nothing have I heard is more despicable, disgusting than that. If that had been me as a parent, I don't know what I would have done. So what did the law enforcement do? They waited 4.5 years to look at this case and investigate this case. And the most severe threat I've ever heard, verbal written threat, she was given 5 days of suspended sentence. This is what's happening in terms of real, true threats going on here. And the people who had the ability to the investigation stripped out, gone with this bill. After 70 years of this bill, the Democrats have stripped out the ability of the Board of Canvassers to investigate fraud in a recount and to get subpoena power. And now you refer off to these hyper-partisan individuals who will never prosecute this. This is an outrage that we have had this bill passed. I don't know what to do in terms of expressing to the people here in the state of Michigan why the Democrats are doing this now. 70 years of a bill that has worked well, and the Democrats stripped the provisions out to stop fraud. I think the people here in the state of Michigan know why the Democrats have done this today. Thank you. I'd like my comments printed in the Journal.
Well done. Well done indeed. I think we know exactly why this is happening. The timing couldn't be more perfect. Michigan is going to attempt to steal the election again. They did it the last time. They got away with it the last time. No one's gone to jail. Maybe the occasional, Dropbox stuffer, whatever you want to call those people. The individuals running up to the drop boxes and just cramming in endless ballots. A few of them have been arrested, which is nice. But again, what's really taken place here? They are writing laws and creating laws to cover up their own illegality. It can't get more obvious. It really can't. And it's Bolshevism, the tactics that they employ in order to engage in retaliation against anybody who asks questions. It's Bolshevism. This is our enemy. They learned that somewhere. We know where they learned it, but that right there is the problem. Again, if the military doesn't clean this up, Michiganders are going to start shooting people. That's the way that it is. In this country, we have a constitutional right to take our country back from tyrants. Do we not? Isn't that written down? It certainly is. This is the problem. These kinds of things continue to exist. The very mention that someone would even create such a bill is absurd. That right there should almost be a hanging offense. Just at face value. But again, I don't know how this gets cleaned up. I really don't. I don't know if this gets, again, cleaned up via the military or it's us, but how much more are we going to be able to take? I understand a lot of us are sitting around waiting for the next election to see how it all plays out from a drama standpoint. Whether the lawfare continues, so to speak, well into next year. Is there a lockdown of some kind? Is there, whatever you call it, martial law? Does something like that take place? Does the media shut itself down or get shut down by the good guys? There are endless scenarios that I know a lot of people are passing through their minds right now, and rightfully so. I mean, we have the right to still think and play this multidimensionally as much as possible, but again, the levee just has to break on all of this. Something has got to give. We can't keep going year after year, election season after election season, whether it be 2 years, 4 years, what have you. And bills like this, and you know Gretchen Whitmer's going to sign this into law. Why wouldn't she? It favors her. It favors her and her ilk. She would have to. But again, is that like signing your own death warrant? It pretty much, I mean, you would think it would be. But that right there again is such a big thing on such a large scale that I'm certain a ton of people aren't talking about, but even so, that's happening lots of places all of the time. And this is again, if you want true accountability in our country, we have to see something. We have to see something that we've never ever seen before. That's why they tarred and feathered people back at the founding of our country. They did it because they did it to send a public message. If you steal, this is what happens to you. If you're a turncoat, this is what happens to you. It sent the message to numerous individuals. Don't do the thing that caused this person to get tarred and feathered. We just have to see something. We have to see these people get locked up. We have to see these people get arrested. We've been awake for a very long time. We've been calling for this for a very long time. Something's got to give here. So it can't get more obvious that, again, they're breaking the law and writing laws to break the law. That's all. Again, it seems like that alone would be criminal, but who's to say? Apparently they can get away with it. Okay, one more geopolitical thing here very quickly. This is from the Miami Times, the MiamiTimesOnline.com. I thought this was interesting, certainly from an economic standpoint, and the reason for this, as you might expect, is, it's not singular. There are numerous reasons for this. It was titled the following: Retail Apocalypse Occurring with 3,200 Store Closures. This was on June 18th of this year. It says some 3,200 brick-and-mortar stores, including many in Florida, have closed so far this year, and more are expected to close through the remainder of the year, according to a new analysis. It says retail data provider CoreSite noted that 24% increase in store closures over the last year as the retail industry adjusts to a shift in consumer shopping to online outlets, inflation, and bankruptcies. I'm certain those aren't the only reasons, but it goes on here. It says the 30 stores closing, some or all of their locations range from anchor stores such as Macy's and other mall apparel stores to drugstores and discount stores selling items for around $1. It says, quote, a lot of this year's closures are related to bankruptcies of chains that have been in trouble for a while, like Rite Aid and Rue 21. Neil Saunders, managing director of global data, told CBS Money Watch, quote, we're also seeing several retailers like Family Dollar take action to weed out underperforming locations, unquote. It says Family Dollar led the retail reshuffling by closing 620 stores, including at least one in Florida. The list of closures also includes traditional mall stores, including clothing retailer Rue 21, which announced in May it would close all 543 of its stores as part of its Chapter 11 bankruptcy proceedings. That includes all of the casual women's and men's apparel chains stores in Florida. It says other stores that have closed in Florida include 23 Walmart health centers and 5 Express stores. Let's see here. It says, according to CoreSite, here are just a few of the retail closures so far in 2024. CVS Health, 315. 7-Elevens, 272. Rite Aid, 165. Walgreens Boots Alliance, 77. Macy's, 51. Burlington Stores, 39. Foot Locker, 36. Carter's, 30. Abercrombie & Fitch Company, 22. And Best Buy, 9. It says consumer spending remains solid, rising 0.2% in April, according to the latest available government data. But confidence may be declining, according to the University of Michigan's surveys of consumer sentiment. It says the consumer confidence dropped to 69.1 in May, down from 77.2 in April. Later on in the article, it says, especially vulnerable are apparel and accessories, consumer electronics, home furnishing retailers, according to USB analysts. It says the outlook isn't entirely bleak for retailers, although department stores are likely to continue to lose market share. Off-price conglomerates such as TJK, whose banners include TJ Maxx, could grab billions in sales from the closures of 150 underperforming Macy's stores, according to analysts. Let's see here. It also says this at the very bottom. It says Walmart, Target, Costco, Home Depot, and other large retailers that have invested in consumer experiences across all channels are best positioned to survive a, quote, biological evolution similar to survival of the fittest, USB said in the analysis, unquote. Well, that's interesting. Now, let me add this, of course, and I'm sure you're thinking of this also. It's not just that individuals are shopping online, it's that people are being smarter with their money. This is a good thing. They're not wasting their money on crap. Again, when things get tight and people awaken to the realities of the world we live in, they don't buy junk and they aren't interested in it. And hopefully they stop being materialistic if they ever were, and materialism starts to go away. Not to mention, we don't trust these stores. Another element, of course, is crime. A lot of these places get robbed on a regular basis. Not to mention, again, you can find healthier alternatives that exist in other marketplaces, in particular online, not just Amazon, but lots of places. Again, Facebook has a store, Gab has a store. Hell, I buy my soap in an antique mall. It's organically made soap with fresh stuff in it. It's remarkably cheap, and I buy it in an antique mall. I don't go to Walgreens to buy soap. Now, I don't smell like an antique mall, thank God for that, but at the exact same time, again, people are buying locally. Farmers markets as well. Same thing with food. It's the same kind of thing. You can buy healthier food for less as opposed to going to these giant stores. This is a good thing. This is a consciousness. People are waking up to all of this. Again, it's all of those elements, of course, that are at play here, but there's another one, of course, which has to do with the bioweapon shots. I mean, retail and those businesses force those shots on their employees. And how's that going so far? Not to mention the turnover rate in the retail business is remarkably high. Dissatisfaction in the job, the people you're working with, some of them are complete nutcases. We've all seen what that looks like in a particular store from time to time. But either way, this is part of the problem too. They're having a hard time finding employees because so many people are sick from those shots. And of course, dead. So there's that too. In fact, since I'm sort of bringing up jab-related things now, let me mention this, and this is a continuing trend, one I've brought up in the past before, but my God, when you get on YouTube and you just start scrolling, it doesn't even have to be any video that's in your particular feed or, the algorithm just shows you a particular video. It's unavoidable, the number of individuals who are making videos talking about their health problems. It's absolutely incredible. It's beyond incredible. And again, you get into the comment sections of numerous videos. It doesn't matter if it's one of the short videos or a long-form video. And some of these people, bless their hearts, but they're making long-form videos on their current state of affairs, whether it be a chronic illness or a death in the family or a death of, a loved one or whoever it may be, a spouse. And they have no idea that the cause of the death was probably the shots. But you get into the comments section, and there's usually a few people who are like, how many COVID shots did they take? Did they take the COVID shots? If they did, that's the reason why they're ill. That's the reason why they're dead. Saw a video the other day. I think Josiah Richwine sent this my way, but it was a guy who has shingles in his eye. Again, he looks like he's in his 30s. He's got 2.7 million subscribers to his channel, and you get into the comments section, and most people are like, oh yeah, I've had shingles, it's terrible. And other people are like, well, that's really interesting, but, we're praying for you and blah, blah, blah. And then you get into the recent comments and you organize them by the most recent. And honestly, they're just like, how many COVID shots did you take? You have shingles in your eyeball because you took the COVID shots. Didn't you make a video a number of years ago talking about how the vaccines are important and we all need to take them? Are you not putting these two things together? It's amazing. Again, chronic illnesses, chronic fatigue, whatever it may be. It could be something as small as that or something as large as I woke up next to my spouse and they were dead. This is happening. And they're making videos about this, but they're completely clueless. So just keep an eye out on that. Again, I find it beyond interesting. It's remarkably sad, as you would expect. But again, these people are not awake to what's going on. It actually does beg this question, too. If they were awake, given the platform that they're on and probably YouTube being their main source of income, if they knew what was going on, would they make a video talking about how the shots were responsible for their ailment or so and so's death? I mean, would they be fearful of losing an audience? Would they be fearful of being attacked online in the comments section? Who knows? Maybe they wouldn't even make it. Again, watching some of those videos is kind of tough. In particular, again, when someone's lost someone close to them who is more than certainly jabbed. I mean, you can kind of make the assumption that that's the case. You know, it's a young individual, maybe in their, again, 30s or 40s, even 20s. And the individual, again, who is their significant other, has absolutely no idea what's happened. I mean, watching the video from that standpoint and sort of gauging the fact that the individual who's making the video who's lost the loved one does not know what's going on. I mean, that's rough. Because you're sitting there and you're watching it and you're going, hello. I mean, it's probably this. You know, did they take the shots? I mean, that just becomes the general question. It's continuing to be the general question. That's not going away. So, yeah. Anyway, I've got more jab stuff, but I'll save that for a little bit later. There is this, education-wise now. This shouldn't shock anybody. Again, wrote a Substack about this over 2 years ago. Approximately 2 years ago. This is from modernity.news with Paul Joseph Watson over there, and it was titled Head of Teachers Association Warns Education System Being Overwhelmed with Migrants. You don't say. It says the president of the German Teachers Association has warned that the country's education system is being overwhelmed with migrant students, many of whom are illiterate and can barely speak the language. Again, you don't say. It says, due to immigration in 2015, the war in Ukraine, and other immigration, new people are constantly coming into the system, but the system is slow to keep up because it's moving too fast, said Stefan Dull, if I'm saying that right. He also warned that a massive burden was being placed on educators because many of the children speak little or no German whatsoever. Yes, now, imagine what it's like in America. He said, after all, they don't speak Farsi or Ukrainian. How are they supposed to teach them? It says, given that around a quarter of fourth grade students in the country can't speak German, Dull said that high number of immigrant children means, quote, the group of illiterates becoming larger. Yes. The higher the percentage of immigrants, the more difficult it is to motivate the class, and the harder it is to find school teachers. This is also why individuals are not entering the businesses I've been over numerous times. They know what they're walking into now. There are more high school students, for example, who are wide awake. Again, unfortunately, the only ones I think at this stage of the game who would want to be school teachers are the individuals who are dead asleep, or the individuals who are beyond ignorant to the point where they see the chaos. They see the lack of teaching English. They see the infiltration of politics within the education profession, so to speak, and they see all of this and they're actually attracted to it. And they say, well, this is exactly what I want to do, and when I become a school teacher, I'll wave the rainbow flag no matter what the principal says, and blah, blah, blah. And they stick their chest out and they make it sound like they've got it all figured out. Then they enter the business and it overwhelms them. And it's only a matter of time before it overwhelms them, and then they quit. Again, if we thought that the teacher turnover rate in America before this whole COVID hoax was bad, and it was, again, the teacher turnover rate, by and large, statistically speaking, before the COVID lie, was if you walked into any school building and you looked around, within 4 to 5 years, half of the employees would be gone. And again, they're leaving for a variety of reasons. It's not just that they're overwhelmed. Maybe they got a job doing something else. Maybe they're teaching in a different building. Maybe they just, again, quit. Maybe they got fired. Who knows? But again, it wouldn't be the awake individual who's seeing all of these dots and connecting all of these dots with what's going on around the world and in society and say, you know what I want to do? I want to be a school teacher. In particular, after all that mask wearing, because that was so important. And God, that helps so many people. Give me a break. Again, only a dead asleep individual would want to be a school teacher now. And of course, when you add in the element of illegal immigration, with it comes a certain level of danger and a lack of preparedness. Again, does a person really want to teach in a classroom with illegals? Does a person want to teach in a classroom where the illegals can't speak English? Again, everybody sort of, when you become a school teacher or you want to become a school teacher, certainly back when I was attempting to be a school teacher, I fully understood that there were going to be numerous individuals who entered my classroom from all over the place, and that I would just have to do whatever I could to manage the situation as best as humanly possible. You also, again, as a sort of a self-defense mechanism, you try to create a scenario in your head as to what your classroom is going to look like and what the demographic makeup is likely to be. In particular, again, depending on where you're teaching. I knew that teaching in Southwest Florida was going to have its own demographic. It was going to be sort of a giant mixture of a lot of different individuals. There were going to be Hispanic students and there were going to be white students. There'd be some black students and a few Asian students. And that was the case. But now, again, these schools are being overwhelmed regardless of the location, certainly in the inner city areas, because this is where most of them are being bused. And this is where the plane flights are going. But this is also working its way out even into the rural areas, and these individuals are unprepared. They do not know how to handle these kinds of students. They don't have the resources. They don't have the paraprofessionals or the classified staff to have them walk around with these students on a day in and day out basis, because you have to pay those people. Not only do you have to pay those individuals, but they have to speak the language of the student that they're walking around with. And I've told those stories before. I mean, hell, I worked in a building where they sent an old woman around with a kid who was from God knows where, south of the border. I'll just say that. He was very south of the border, couldn't speak a lick of English. And they were sending this old white woman around with her, with him, rather. And she didn't speak his language at all. I remember even talking to her, and I went, "So you speak Spanish?" And she goes, "No." And I went, "Why are you here?" She goes, "Well, the money's good, and they need an aide, and they want him to have an aide, so they just picked me out of an aide pool, and here I am." I said, "Well, that's not good." I said, "I'm going to partner him up with some other Spanish-speaking students who also speak English, and hopefully they can help him and explain some things." But again, I even raised this concern in a particular parent conference, and everybody was shocked. They were like, "Wait a minute, that aide doesn't speak Spanish?" And I went, "No, she doesn't, because I asked her." Everybody just assumed that she did. And finally, before you knew it, she ended up getting cut loose. She was pulled out of the building and pulled away from that particular student. And unfortunately, again, I don't necessarily think it's a good thing, but the student was basically on his own now. So take that for what you want. But again, is a Spanish-speaking student who doesn't speak English better without an aide who doesn't speak Spanish, or are they better with one? It's hard to know. But again, the kid picked up English relatively quickly because he was hanging out with some girls who liked him. And, and they all spoke the same language as well. So it worked out fine that way. But my God. Of course, if you look at the teacher education business as well, which I've openly stated, they're completely unprepared too. They're not teaching these individuals who want to be school teachers what they're actually going to walk into. I mean, they're not preparing them for anything. They're making everything political. They're not teaching them about the job, and they're certainly not teaching them about the current state of affairs in society. They're teaching them to just go along with whatever the school says, and you'll be a great employee because you'll just do what you're told. Give me a break. Again, the schools are bankrupt. There are hiring freezes that are in place with a lot of these school districts. And again, they just don't have the right people in the right positions in many cases. And this whole issue of our invasion and our country being invaded, again, these individuals, unfortunately, by court order, have the right to go to school. And it's flooding the environment. And like I said earlier, it's also making them, of course, unsafe. In fact, I think I brought that up in the last episode, that a lot of these schools are going into lockdowns because of the illegal aliens that are chasing each other around the schools. Not just, of course, in the schools, but, of course, around the schools, and law enforcement chasing them around, which, of course, causes the school to completely go into a lockdown and then re-traumatize everybody, thinking that there's some kind of a shooting taking place when, who knows, maybe there is outside of the building with illegal aliens, and maybe there isn't. I don't know, but it's not good. In fact, I would go so far as to say that that's just becoming the norm now. This whole influx again of our invasion and illegal aliens in schools, this is becoming the norm, and it's a remarkably unfortunate norm. But there's also this too, and I have some audio I want to play with this. This is some audio from an individual who is calling out Stacey Davis Gates, who is the president of the Chicago Teachers Union. Give this guy a listen regarding what the president of the Chicago Teachers Union has been saying and blaming for the illiteracy rate in Chicago schools. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, everybody. So, Stacey Davis Gates is the president of the Chicago Teachers Union. And she has recently said in an interview that conservatives do not want Black children to learn to read. In fact, she goes so far as to say, and let me get this right, is that it's part of the oath that they take to become right wing. Now, I must have missed that day in my right-wing indoctrination camp because I never took that oath. And another thing, in Chicago particularly, there is not one elected official from school board to school administrators all the way up through the governor's office who is conservative. So who exactly are these mystical people who are trying to keep Black children down in their district? In fact, under her administration, only less than 25% of Black children met proficiency in reading. Okay, so who is selecting the curriculum? Who is administering the district? Who is teaching the classes? Not conservatives in Chicago. So really, who is responsibility for these kids' lack of proficiency in reading? I don't think it's conservatives.
They're not learning to read because of the people who are employed there. It's that simple. These individuals are not being taught to be school teachers. They're not taught how to teach people how to read. In fact, teaching someone how to read, you don't even have to be a teacher who knows how to teach people how to read. All you have to do is just pick up a copy of the McGuffey Readers. That's it. Start with the very first one, read it yourself, and then hand it to your child, and then read it with them. That's it. And then the child will start to read on their own. It is that fast. That does not take a 4-year degree to figure this out. But again, that right there is the problem. The McGuffey Readers aren't used as the right tool, the right people aren't being hired, and these are not the correct discussions, of course, that are being had at the teacher education level. It's all about politics still. It's all about activism. It's all about, telling the students how you feel about things and feelings. It's not factual instruction. It is quite literally 2 or 3 dimensions deep now in indoctrination. And then, of course, the entire business is built around money, and the entire business is built around receiving money because of achievement. And if they're not achieving, which they aren't, what do they have to do in order to make up the difference and manipulate the statistics? They have to dumb everything down again. And they dumb things down from not just the state down into the actual classroom, but they dumb them down from the teacher education profession all the way up into the classroom. And then all of that dumbing down falls right into the lap of the so-called classroom teacher. And then, of course, who is the recipient of said dumbing down? The students. It's the students every single time. They end up graduating and they can't spell. I saw a video the other day, and I put it on Gab and I put it in the war video, of a black gal working at Walmart, and the guy hands her change. Just coins. There's quarters, there's nickels, there's dimes. And he says, here. And I don't know what he was buying. It was a pack of cigarettes or something. But he puts it on the counter, and she looks at him and goes, I'm not counting that. It's not because she doesn't want to. It's because she can't. She can't count. She can't count change. She can't count money. This is apparently, again, a girl seemingly in her 20s who cannot count actual change. Frankly, it's kind of sad. It's its own form of illiteracy, without a doubt. But this is the problem. It was never even taught to her how to count change. She probably graduated from high school and cannot count change. Again, what is the school system doing? They're not doing anything. We have numerous individuals, as we know, who can't write in cursive and can't read cursive. We have numerous individuals who can't read an analog clock. I mean, this is a problem. But they think that, climate change is real. I mean, I could ramble about this forever, but I think you get my point. If everything is driven by achievement and statistics, then it's very simple. They have to cheat in order to receive any funding. And they're not receiving a whole lot of funding these days because states don't have the money anymore. You've heard me bring up, of course, the state of Ohio where I live. Their entire budget, as far as state funding for public education goes, since 2019, has been cut in half. They're receiving 50% less than what they used to receive from the state. It's because the state is advocating for homeschooling. They're advocating for other ways of learning because they know that the public school system sucks. It's always sucked. Frankly, that's what makes watching a lot of these board meetings and these school board meetings very, very difficult. It's hard to watch them. You're watching these individuals consistently try to defend the environment that they are making bankrupt with their own bankrupt frame of mind. It's really alarming. And of course, they're jabbed. And that needs to be taken into consideration too. I mean, these individuals, again, by and large, if they're jabbed, are not thinking clearly. Hell, they weren't thinking clearly before the shots came out. Now we know, as scientific proof, that the shots are causing dementia, Alzheimer's, and prion disease, among numerous other things. Again, what would possess a teachers' union president to say such a thing? That conservatives don't want black children to read. And in one fell swoop, she just insulted every single conservative school teacher that may teach in the Chicago public school system. Now, I don't know how many conservatives actually do. You would think that they would try to find, a different line of work or another place to teach of all the school systems that exist in America. But even so, the frame of mind of that kind of a person to make that kind of a public statement, knowing full well that it would get out there, they're not playing with a full deck. There's something wrong with that individual. Again, at this point, I think it's safe to say it could be chemical. No reason why it wouldn't be at this point. That actually leads me to this now. Jab stuff. Here we go, hot off the presses. May 28th, 2024, in the International Journal of Medicine. The title of this accepted manuscript was, quote, "A potential association between COVID-19 vaccination and development of Alzheimer's disease." Interesting. Here's the abstract. The challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was no pandemic and there is no COVID, extend to concerns about vaccine side effects, particularly potential links to neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease, or AD. It says the study investigates the association between COVID-19 vaccination and the onset of Alzheimer's disease and its predominant state, mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. It says a nationwide retrospective cohort study leveraging data from the Korean National Health Insurance Service was conducted. The study concluded in Seoul, South Korea, analyzed data from a random 50% sample of city residents aged 65 and above, totaling 558,017 individuals. Participants were divided into vaccinated and unvaccinated groups, with vaccinations including mRNA and cDNA vaccines. The study focused on Alzheimer's disease and mild cognitive impairment incidents post-vaccination, identified via ICD-10 codes, using multivariable logistic and Cox regression analysis. Patients with vascular dementia or Parkinson's disease served as controls. The results. Findings showed an increased incidence of MCI and AD in vaccinated individuals, particularly those receiving mRNA vaccines. Within 3 months post-vaccination. The mRNA vaccine group exhibited a significantly higher incidence of Alzheimer's disease compared to the unvaccinated group. It says no significant relationship was found with vascular dementia or Parkinson's disease. And then conclusions. Preliminary evidence suggests as a potential link between COVID-19 vaccination, particularly mRNA vaccines, and increased incidences of Alzheimer's disease and mild cognitive impairment. This underscores the need for further research to elucidate the relationship between vaccine-induced immune responses and neurodegenerative processes, advocating for continuous monitoring and investigation into the vaccine's long-term neurological impacts. Yes. If you take that alone, okay, the cognitive impairment bubble, as big as it is and everything that exists inside of it, the mental capacity of the individuals who are jabbed, and you think about all the people who work in all the different lines of work throughout the entire world, how on earth can anything be maintained in the future? How can anything be maintained? Infrastructure, transportation, the water pipes in the ground. City workers took the shots. The education business took the shots. Corporations took the shots. Governments took the shots. It's over flippin' whelming if you just sit and you just think about the purposeful effects of these shots and the impact that it's having on the individuals who are responsible for maintaining this thing that we call society. I mean, honestly, you send your kids to a school 9 times out of 10, or maybe 7 times out of 10, somewhere around there, you're sending them into a classroom with a school teacher who is jabbed. So you're sending them quite literally into an environment where the individual may be suffering from cognitive impairment and not know it. And if the people around said person are also jabbed, and they too are suffering potentially from cognitive impairment and not know it, how on earth would anybody in that environment know if somebody is cognitively impaired or not? Again, it's the same thing with the entire medical profession and hospitals and doctors' offices. The person engaging in open heart surgery on you is jabbed. What's keeping that person from falling over face first into your chest cavity? From the shots. What's keeping them from messing up a surgical procedure, or skipping a step, or giving you too much anesthesia, or not enough anesthesia, or too much medication, or not enough medication, whatever it may be? These lines of work, these businesses cannot be trusted. Now get a load of this. This actually comes from Ohio State University, believe it or not. This was published by Ethan Huff of Natural News, and this was over on shithitthefanplan.com. This article was titled, "If You Got Vaccinated for COVID, You're More Likely to Die." Pretty blunt. Here we go. Here's what it says. Researchers from Ohio State University recently discovered that fully vaccinated patients who test positive for the Wuhan coronavirus COVID-19 are much more likely to die than unvaccinated COVID patients. Yeah. Again, if you were to print this off and just say, "Here, doc, read this." You walk into a doctor's office and go, "What do you think?" Walk into a hospital and just push this in front of them. What do you think? Part of the brain damage that exists here is the cognitive dissonance that exists. It's overwhelming, continuing to be overwhelming. It says, published in the journal Frontiers in Immunology, their study states that among COVID-19 patients, mortality rate was significantly higher among vaxxed versus non-vaxxed patients. It says, quote, while mortality rates were 36% and 27% for non-COVID-19 or non-vaccinated and vaccinated patients respectively, in COVID-19 patients, mortality rates were 37% for non-vaccinated patients and 70% for vaccinated patients. Simply put, getting injected for the Chinese virus increases one's risk of death from COVID by nearly double. Again, this is where, bless their hearts with the actual study, but there is no COVID. It's the shots doing the killing because it weakens your immune system and cleaves your DNA. So you're just getting ill. Now, apparently, when any ill person dies, what are they saying? They're saying the same thing they said in 2020. Well, they died of COVID because we gave them a COVID test and they tested positive. No, they have AIDS. They have a ruined immune system. It goes on. It says the researchers also noted that the Charleson's Comorbidity Index score, or CCI, was also significantly higher among people who got jabbed versus those who decided to forego the injections. No kidding. It says disease and death are the consequence of getting COVID injected. It says the following: while it is true that those who choose to get injected were more likely to also have underlying health conditions, the powers that be fooled people with pre-existing conditions by spreading a false narrative. It is also true that the tens of millions of otherwise healthy people got jabbed because their jobs, school, etc. required it. It says, quote, our results suggest that vaccination status of hospital-admitted COVID-19 patients may not be instructive in determining mortality risk, the researchers wrote. It may reflect that within the general population, those individuals at highest risk for COVID-19 mortality immune failure are likely to be vaccinated. So what's that mean then? What's the actual cause then? Because it's not COVID. That doesn't exist. It says early death is not the only risk factor associated with COVID injections. We also know that COVID jabs are linked to other severe health complications such as potentially fatal blood, heart, and neurological conditions. Yep. This is the largest ever global study on the subject found that COVID injections are dangerous in general. The study was published around the time that AstraZeneca withdrew its viral vector COVID injections from the global market following the revelation that the shot causes deadly thrombosis and thrombocytopenia syndrome, or TTS. Now listen to this ridiculous quote. Here's what the study further said. It said, quote, while it is established that vaccination reduces risk of hospitalization, there is conflicting data on whether it improves outcome among hospitalized COVID-19 patients, the study further reads. That makes zero sense. That makes zero sense. It reduces the risk of hospitalization taking the shots. Prove it. Prove it. They have no proof that that's the case because the exact opposite is true. Unless, of course, they die at home, in which case there's no need to go to the hospital. It's straight to the morgue. They go on saying this in the study. It says the only perhaps possible benefit of getting injected, emphasis on the word perhaps, is to prevent hospitalization, the study suggests. This being what we were told from the very beginning was the only potential benefit of getting shot. It says the study's authors made it clear that they in no way investigated this possibility because their data does not address it. No kidding. No kidding, because they can't make a correlation. They can't say the more you get injected, the less you'll be hospitalized. You can't make that claim. You have no proof. I'll end it there, but again, I saw a particular discussion the other day, and this individual, again, this is the problem with these half-truths, and people not knowing what the truth is and then letting these people get away with saying what they're saying. And again, letting them get away, you would just hold them accountable by correcting them and educating them. But it was some kind of a podcast, and it was some kind of a discussion. My apologies on what it was and when I saw it. It wasn't that long ago. But it was a couple of guys talking, and they were talking about the COVID shots. And again, they were talking about how dangerous they are. Unfortunately, the guy who was being talked with and interviewed, rather, he openly stated that vaccines are good and that the Gardasil shot is actually remarkably healthy for girls because it prevents cervical cancer. So he recommends the Gardasil shot. Again, if I was sitting at that table, I'd have slapped him. The fact is that all shots are poison. People need to know this now. And when we hear people talk about, well, I didn't get the COVID shot, but I'm going to take these shots, they're ubiquitous now. The mRNA technology and that biowarfare, however you want to phrase it, and all the millions of ways it's been phrased, the nanotech, everything else, it's all the same. It's now in all of the shots moving forward. People have got to stay away from all of them. And again, the hospital systems don't know this. Your average doctor, pediatrician, not a clue. It's right over their heads. They have absolutely no idea. I've got one more quick article here and then 2 pieces of audio. And then I'm going to cut this episode loose here. This was from ICANN on June 18th. It was titled, Fourth V-Safe Production Reveals a Disturbing Trend in Miscarriages and Menstrual Disturbances Following COVID-19 Vaccination. Interesting. See, the test of time is the only test that matters. I remember it like it was yesterday, back in the very beginning, January. I mean, it was even in December of 2020. People started taking these shots, and these kinds of things were happening. Reproductive health, lost pregnancies, lost children, halfway through a pregnancy takes a COVID shot, child dies, mom dies, etc., etc. This is still going on. It says, quote, while CDC assures the public that COVID-19 vaccinations do not cause fertility issues, that's what the CDC says, and that any menstrual irregularities are minor and temporary, the V-Safe free text entries CDC was forced to produce by a court order show the opposite. Remember the V-Safe app? Remember all that? If you have an adverse reaction, download the V-Safe app and tell us about your situation. They got flooded with information. They were getting cursed at left and right on this platform. CDC can't handle it now. It says ICANN's review of the free text records produced to date, which are only a small fraction of the total set to be released by CDC, revealed that at least 500 reports of miscarriage and more than 2,000 reports of menstrual disturbances. Now again, that's the understatement of the century. If one teeny app that only a certain number of people actually know about is reporting only 500, ladies and gentlemen, you have to multiply that number by I don't know how much. It's an incalculable number because you've got endless individuals miscarrying who are jabbed and they'll never make the connection. It says here are a few examples, and this again, these are particular stories that were typed out on that application. One says, quote, I had a miscarriage at 13 weeks between my first and second vaccine. No chromosomal abnormalities detected. Exactly. There wouldn't be, because the doctor doesn't think that the shots have anything to do with it. The next one said, quote, I started my menstrual cycle and I've been in menopause for 11 months. I started the night of my vaccine, not sure if it was a coincidence. Not a coincidence. Those don't exist. The third comment says, quote, I had a miscarriage after second dose of Pfizer COVID vaccine. I felt fine until I had the vaccine. Within 48 hours, pregnancy symptoms ceased. I have no history of fertility issues or complications and had 2 healthy, uneventful pregnancies prior to this, unquote. Here's the last one. They said, quote, I feel this has affected my hormones greatly. About a week after my shot, I felt thrown into menopause, hot flashes, horrible night sweats, mood swings, and anxiety. Prior to shot, I had none of these symptoms, unquote. It says not only has CDC ignored these reports from its own V-Safe program, but it's also ignored studies from healthcare specialists within the United States supporting these same harms. For example, one study found significant harms to pregnant women and infants following COVID-19 vaccination during pregnancy. Instead of taking these reported harms seriously, CDC's website instead points to a study funded by none other than CDC itself to claim COVID-19 vaccination during pregnancy is not associated with adverse outcomes. These people have to hang, ladies and gentlemen. There have to be comeuppances for these people. The CDC has to cease to exist. It cannot be reformed. We don't need new leadership there. It needs to be shut down. It is a deep state, satanic apparatus that is lying to endless individuals and causing their deaths. This is the kind of thing I've been talking about, where if we don't see these organizations cease to exist in the future, we're not winning. It says this again reflects that CDC is not a medical or science organization, but rather a political one. And like all political entities, it sets a policy, in this case, that COVID-19 vaccines are safe and everyone must partake, and then only publishes information to support that policy. People don't matter, it says, facts don't matter, only the policy of increased vaccine uptake matters. Unquote. That leads me to this now. I've got 2 pieces of audio from Dr. Mackis's page. This first one is a conversation from the lady who is normally on the vaccine jab bus, but they are not face-to-face, but they're doing this over Zoom, and she's talking with a woman by the name of Susan Graves. She's describing her daughter, who miscarried twins after the COVID-19 shot. So give this first one a listen, and then I'll play the next piece of audio after this. This runs about 7 minutes long, so give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
So let's start with your story with the flu vaccine injury. Tell us what happened.
Sure. So, well, first of all, I had the normal childhood vaccines back in the early 60s and late 50s. But of course, back then there wasn't much going on. There weren't that many of them. Anyway, I am generally a very healthy person, and people were getting flu vaccines along the way when I started working, and I just never bothered because I don't really get sick. I don't get the flu very often at all, or maybe I'd only gotten it once or twice in my late teens or something. Anyway, a flu came out, I think it was 1978, the H1N1 bird flu. And everyone was stressing how dangerous it was and to go ahead and get back. So I did. And I didn't feel good right afterwards and went home, and I actually stayed in bed for over 24 hours because I got a fever. I got severe muscle pains and aches. I got basically got very, very, very weak. And I had a roommate, luckily, that was keeping me watered and helping me get to the bathroom and back. But I literally thought I was going to die. I just felt terrible, not even good enough to even call an ambulance. I just was waiting it out, hoping that it would go away. Of course it did. I'm here. But ever since then, I've never gotten a flu vaccine. I'm very, I'm very, very healthy and decided I was a little leery of flu vaccines since then. So when COVID happened, I was not going to take that either, and didn't. And I made it through. I got COVID once. It was during the Omicron period, and I was fine. I mean, after 5 or 6 days and some ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, I made it through. And I had a little bit of a loss of taste and smell, but that went away and I'm fine. So that was my vaccine injury, and that's why I'm very leery of them. And then my daughter, who was in her early 30s and living in Europe, when COVID came out, I told her she had to take it for work, and because she travels a lot for work. And so I told her, if you absolutely have to take it, get the Johnson & Johnson one, because it's not an mRNA one. And so she did that. But her now mother-in-law, who lives in Poland also, is a doctor, and she dragged her fiance at the time and her into her office and gave her both of them the Pfizer booster. They got married, and this is right before the wedding. And 5 months later, she became pregnant, and it was with twins. And she lost that pregnancy. So I am pretty sure, since it was so close to the vaccine, that was a good candidate.
Susan, how many weeks pregnant was she?
10 weeks.
I'm sorry.
With twins.
Yeah.
So the upside is I've gotten her to not take any more, and she did get pregnant again, and had a beautiful baby girl. So I have a granddaughter, but that was tough.
Yeah, very tough. I'm sorry to hear that. And also, it's interesting when you say you did not take the shot and you just had COVID and you just dealt with it and you're there. So the fear.
Yeah.
Does your daughter understand now the dangers of vaccinations, or we're not quite there yet?
She's we're not quite there. I'm working with her, trying to educate her about the childhood vaccines for my granddaughter and her daughter, and she's letting me talk to her about it, and I'm giving her facts out of Turtles All the Way Down and other reference material that I can find. And I'm hoping that, I can get her to stop, but she is giving the child some childhood vaccines, and I'm having a tough time trying to get around that mindset.
Yeah, I know it's extremely hard, and many of our viewers will understand what you're saying. What advice would you give to the young pregnant mum that's watching now and was going to go ahead and get vaccinated? What would you say to that young mum?
I mean, all I've been able to do is try to show her studies that she doesn't see in mainstream media, and maybe share my story, I think.
Well, thank you very much for telling us your story and your daughter's story.
Sure.
It's a hard road, this whole vaccine thing. I used to be your daughter, and it took me to have an injury of my child for me to even understand it. So it's a very, very difficult road because we're taught to trust in the medical profession and not question. So
right.
It's hard. So I appreciate you coming and doing this. It's not easy. So thank you.
Sure.
Again, I could spend an hour talking about that 7-minute clip and everything that was in it that was false. This continues to be one of the major problems that I have, again, with Children's Health Defense and these vaccine testimonies, is that there doesn't seem to be any educating these individuals. Because, again, it could be that the people doing the interviewing and the people putting all of this together don't know, but either way, this is the problem that I have, sort of these half-truths, constantly trying to bend the spoon instead of looking at the person and saying, there is no spoon. There is no COVID. It doesn't exist. There's radiation poisoning from 5G towers. There's being shed on via electromagnetism from being around the jabbed. That's it. If people had the symptoms that she had, where she said, I had COVID or I got COVID once, the fact is she has a compromised immune system or a weaker immune system, and as a result, she became ill. Again, 5G towers are being shed on. That was it. That's why she got ill. It wasn't something that was in the air that she ate or someone sneezed on her or whatever. That's not how it works. Same thing again with the whole variant talk that she mentioned. This was during Omicron or it was during that. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. But again, the closed-mindedness of her daughter to lose twins and then still inject her now existing child with any kind of vaccination, my God in heaven. I mean, these people have got to have the biggest blinders on known to man. It's awful, but these half-truths have got to stop. People have got to stop trying to bend the spoon and figure out why the spoon is the way that it is and just understand there is no spoon. There is no COVID. Now here's the next piece of audio. This is again a conversation over Zoom, and she's having a conversation with a woman by the name of Suni Teker, Suniteker, and she's describing how the shots killed both of her elderly parents. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
I'm just emotional, just thinking about it. But yeah, my parents are 82. So, but they died within a month of each other. Um, they had gotten the vaccine, all of them. Well, I don't know. My mother had gotten the first two, and she wasn't on any medication. She was really healthy. No medication for an 80-year-old. That was just amazing. And then you could just see her, she got shingles after the second. And then she got the booster in the fall and had anaphylactic reaction and ended up in the hospital. And she was actually diagnosed, actually gave her, the allergist gave her the diagnosis, one of them, but anaphylactic reaction to the COVID vaccine. And she was on a ventilator for a week because she couldn't swallow. But miraculously survived that and came home, but just wasn't the same. And so she knew not to get any more COVID vaccines. But it was hard to withstand the pressure from her doctor. So she got the flu vaccine after that. She got 2 shingles vaccines. So in December 15th of 2022, she got the flu vaccine. And that day she got another anaphylactic reaction. So when I came, she called, I ran over there and I said, "Mom, did you get another shot?" Really upset because, and so she was scared to tell me, but she got the flu vaccine. And so then she just sort of like was failing. She just was, since all the vaccines, just getting weaker and weaker and weaker. I could just tell she wasn't right. December 31st, she went into the ER and they said this must be cancer. By the time we got her into the oncologist, they put her on hospice. So to me, it sounded like turbo cancer. I mean, it was a turbo cancer. And they just said that they couldn't do anything for her. And they put her on hospice and she died on February 12th of last year. And go ahead.
Suni, that's just such a tragic story that your mom was on no medication. I just want to just quickly go through this with you. She was on no medication. She took these, do you know if they were Pfizer or Moderna? Do you know what she even took? Which ones?
The senior citizens in this area, she got Pfizer.
Okay. So she has an anaphylactic shock on her booster, yet her doctor still recommends she goes ahead and has more vaccines, maybe not the COVID shot, but so she has flu shot. And then she's also had shingles, and he recommends giving her shingles vaccinations. It doesn't make sense.
I know. Yeah. It was, well, I mean, and when I say no medication after the vaccines, then she got heart problems and she had a thyroid issue. I mean, by the time she died, she was on so many medications, so it was like 2 heart medications. And I mean, it was just like textbook. I mean, everything you guys were saying, it was happening. I was watching it happen.
Just awful, Suni. I'm so sorry. So, okay, so now we're going to go on to your dad.
And so my dad, they weren't married anymore. My dad was living in the Philippines, and he had the Sinovac. In the Philippines, they were very, very, very rigid. You could not do anything without the vaccine. So even though he was watching Fox News there, he could not leave his house. You couldn't go grocery shopping without having had the vaccine. They were extremely rigid. So he got the Sinovac, and then the Moderna shot came. He got that one. And my dad's parents lived until they were 99. My dad was in excellent health. He was we just knew he was going to live to be 100 the way he took care of himself. And so he came to visit me December 20th, and he wasn't feeling well. And So we took him, and he had been to the doctor in the Philippines. He just hadn't been feeling well since Thanksgiving. So it was not very long. We went to the hospital on December 26th. No, we went to the urgent care on the 26th because he just wasn't feeling well. And there they said, you have to go to the hospital right now. You have leukemia and pneumonia, and he died a week later.
Suni, that's awful.
Yeah.
You've had it terrible. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I mean, I know I'm lucky. I'm hearing other stories from other people. My parents were 82, so I mean, yeah, to me it's been very difficult, and I do follow you and all of the really like warriors, truth warriors, to help me not feel so alone, because no one just is acknowledging it.
Yeah, Suni, you are definitely not alone. There are so many people suffering like you, and I'm just so sorry. Did you take the COVID shot?
Thank you. No.
Did you get COVID?
Yes.
And how did you get through it?
Well, I do actually. I feel like I'm suffering from long COVID. I got it again in December, I think, but I didn't take a test, but I just haven't felt the same since then. I've been reading, listening to Pierre Corey, and also looking at the FLCCC stuff. And yeah, I am just not myself.
But Suni, you've lost both parents. You're not going to be yourself.
Yeah, I know. But physically, like I had like really bad eczema before my parents got sick. It came on like early December of 2022. And so, yeah. So and then I got it again. I got COVID in December of this year, and I haven't felt the same since. And I can tell the difference between, grief and stress and my physical health not being right. I'm working with a naturopath, but we think it's mast cell activation syndrome, which I've been doing some reading. It looks like COVID can trigger that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. And also shedding is real.
Yeah, do you think it is?
Oh yeah. There's no doubt. No doubt, I'm afraid. What advice would you give to someone suffering who has lost a loved one with the COVID shot? How can you help them? What can you say to them?
Well, a bunch of us in the area who are medical freedom women, we've started a group. And so we meet monthly, and that's really helped me just to, I watch Del Bigtree weekly. I watch your show. Just to feel not alone. I talk with other women in the area. Yeah. So reach out, get support from like-minded people. That's helped.
And Suni, would you ever, in any conditions, pandemics, future ones, whatever it is they're going to do, would you ever take a vaccine ever again?
No, absolutely not.
Is there anything else you want to add to the story?
I want to say thank you, Polly, and Children's Health Defense, which has just been, lifeline for so many of us, to not feel alone and to feel hope. And so I thank you for your service to mankind.
Oh, Suni, thank you. I'm sorry we're not there to give you a big hug.
Yeah, thank you, Polly.
Hopefully we'll see you at some point. But if you give the names of your parents to Sawyer, we'll write their names on the bus.
Oh, okay.
And if you have a photo of them, we can put their photographs inside our bus as a memorial. So we'll
okay.
If you want, we'd like to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Polly.
Hope you get better soon as well.
Thank you.
At least she told her shedding is real. That's good. That's a step in the right direction. But again, don't worry. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, because Anthony Fauci was on CBS Mornings the other day, earlier this week, talking with Gail. And at the end of their conversation, which I, of course, have in the Substack article, and I believe I put it in the war video as well, at the end, Gail said, "Thank you for saving lives, Dr. Fauci. Thank you for saving lives." While he's out there pushing his new book titled On Call. Let me see if there's a subtitle to this absolute rag. A Doctor's Journey in Public Service, Anthony Fauci, MD. And of course, Albert Bourla is out there saying that, Pfizer's got more plans. They've got more shots. They've got more cancer treatments. They're going to have cancer vaccines here, and that the mRNA is going to be in the cancer vaccines. Joke's on everybody. They cause cancer. We know where they're moving. We know exactly what they're doing. They know what they're doing. This is not an accident. This is a huge, huge on purpose. In fact, regarding Anthony Fauci's book On Call, if you bounce over on Amazon and you look it up, it actually says it's already a bestseller, God knows why, but there's only 35 comments. At least the last time that I looked, there were only 35 comments, and there were 2 negative comments of the 35 comments. They weren't verified purchases, but they were basically calling him a murderer and saying that the shots don't help anybody, and that was basically it. Again, the other 33 comments are all positive. Interesting number there, 33. But yeah, I don't even think you can get in and make a comment. It wouldn't even let me. So I don't know what that's about, but there you have it. So a best-selling book with only 35 comments, and they're not letting anybody else comment. Also not an accident. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening as always. Have a great weekend, and I will catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.